As the communication world evolved, moving from snail mail to email, South African Post Office has repeatedly failed to implement digital transformation initiatives, losing ground in the modern logistics landscape.
I think if you go back to the classic iteration of what postal services were meant to be, postal services fulfill what we refer to as a universal service obligation, which was obviously to connect as many human beings for as cheaply as possible. So when you look at the type of footprint that a post office would have, it was in fulfillment of that particular mandate. The problem with the South African Post Office is that its mandate never really kept up with the times. So what you then saw over many years is that the way people communicate and the way people exchange information kept evolving at a much faster pace than the ability of the post office to keep up.
In 2023, the post office was placed in business rescue, owing creditors 8.7 billion rand. As the post office seeks reinvention, Communications Minister Solly Malatsi has opened applications for new board members, prioritizing expertise in e-commerce and logistics. President Cyril Ramaphosa also signed the Post Office Amendment Act in December, allowing the entity to expand its mandate from basic postal services to diversified services and expand its revenue generation streams and repurpose the post office infrastructure. Critics are uncertain if the post office can still catch up in this digital age.
So when you then look at what this amendment bill tried to do, it was essentially trying to bring the post office into the 1990s, allowing it to essentially be part of a much wider and a much more modern communications ecosystem. Now, unfortunately, that happened far too late, and it really is a type of action that, while good in intention, is unlikely to get the type of outcomes that the government had in mind when they first thought about this particular step. And unfortunately, it is indeed a type of a stillborn exercise.
The ability to adapt, I think, has been lost. So we still find that the old post office of the 80s is still trying to digitize the old post office of the 80s. The same scenarios, the same paper processes, they're trying to turn electronic. They're not adding new digital options that aren't the same as paper to provide to South Africa. They really need a refresh. They need to step away from the model of the 80s and come into a whole new world and bring in the experts that can help them.
Government is hoping to collaborate with the private sector to maximize its offerings. However, the move has been seen with some skepticism.
There has to be a want to do it. We've seen it for the last couple of years. As you said, it's been a decade. And unfortunately, over time, management changes have caused, various proposals to be pushed aside. But the latest push by the minister themselves to go to PPP options, to private partnerships, is definitely the minister's words, but not necessarily what's happening on the ground. There's no intent to work with private partners, and if there is, they're not necessarily trying to work with industry specialists.
With mounting financial troubles, 150 million rand emergency bailout, and an uncertain future, the post office is at a critical turning point. Hasina Gori, SABC News, Johannesburg.